In the cool shade by the banks of the stream, Li Wei sat, his hands clenched into fists. The Tang dynasty was said to be a time of prosperity, but none of that wealth reached his family, nor did it ease the sting of failure that gnawed at him. The soft rustle of bamboo leaves and the distant chatter of villagers did little to calm the storm raging inside him. "Foolish boy," his father's voice echoed in his head. "Failed again. How can you face anyone now? How will you ever bring honor to our family?" Li Wei's knuckles turned white as he pressed them into the dirt. Honor. The word felt like a weight on his chest. He had failed the imperial examinations not once, but twice. All the sleepless nights poring over Confucian texts, memorizing the words of sages until his eyes ached, had led him nowhere. At 18, his life felt over before it had truly begun. Nearby, the laughter of his former classmates reached his ears, sharp and cutting. They were on their way to the academy, wearing fresh robes, their futures bright and full of promise. His stomach twisted. He imagined the sneers that would greet him if he dared to show his face in the village. The peasant who thought he could rise, they would say. The fool who dreamt of a scholar's robes. Li Wei stood, dusting the dirt from his hands, his movements stiff with anger. He walked aimlessly, wanting to escape the village, the memories, the weight of his own failure. His feet carried him through the crowded streets, past the dumpling vendor who barely gave him a glance, past the incense curling from the temple altars, until at last he found himself at the edge of town. The old temple stood before him, weathered, ancient, and silent. He hadn't meant to come here, but there was nowhere else to go. Li Wei hesitated at the gate.
"Running away again?"
He muttered bitterly to himself, but what else could he do? From under the shadow of the temple's eaves, an old monk sat, his robes worn and simple, his head bowed in meditation. For a moment, Li Wei thought he could slip past unnoticed, but the monk's voice broke the silence, calm and steady.
"You look troubled, young man."
Li Wei froze. The monk opened his eyes and met Li Wei's gaze, a quiet intensity in his expression.
"Come sit,"
the monk said, gesturing to the steps beside him. Li Wei hesitated, unsure. He didn't know what to expect, but something in the monk's voice, or perhaps his own exhaustion, made him sit down, his legs feeling as if they might give way if he stood any longer. For a while, neither of them spoke. The sound of the wind rustling through the bamboo filled the silence. Li Wei kept his eyes on the ground, unsure of what to say. When the monk finally spoke, his words were soft, measured.
"What burdens your heart?"
Li Wei felt something crack inside him. He hadn't meant to speak, hadn't meant to reveal his shame, but the words poured out in a rush.
"I failed the exams, twice. My father thinks I'm a disgrace. My family, my village, they all look down on me. I'm nothing but a disappointment."
"And because you failed, you believe you have no worth."
"Isn't that obvious? What good am I if I can't even pass an exam? Without a position, I'm nobody. Everyone knows that."
"Is that what you believe? That your worth is tied to passing a test?"
"What else is there?"
"What do you see when you look at yourself?"
"I see failure."
The monk nodded again, as though he had expected the answer.
"That is because you only see yourself through the eyes of others. You've let their expectations, their judgments, define you. Tell me, if no one was watching, no father, no teachers, no villagers, what would you do? Who would you be?"
Li Wei opened his mouth to answer, but no words came. He had never thought about it before. Who was he, without the weight of expectation?
"You are not your failures, young one, nor are you your successes. You are more than what others think of you."
The words hung in the air between them. Li Wei felt something stir inside him, a tiny ember, barely visible, but there all the same. The monk stood up, brushing the dust from his robe.
"Come back tomorrow, if you wish to learn more."
The next day, Li Wei returned to the temple, not sure why, but drawn by the strange calm he had felt in the monk's presence. Over the following days, they talked. They spoke of many things: life, suffering, the path to enlightenment, but most of all, they sat in silence. It was in the silence that Li Wei began to notice things he hadn't before. The way the wind shifted the leaves, the scent of the earth after a rain, the quiet rhythm of his own breath. For the first time in his life, he felt still, as if the storm inside him had finally quieted. The monk taught him how to meditate, how to breathe deeply, and let his thoughts come and go like the wind. At first, Li Wei struggled, his mind racing with all the things he should have been doing, all the people he had disappointed. But slowly, day by day, he learned to let go. One morning, as the sun rose over the temple, the monk spoke.
You seek respect, but respect doesn't come from others. It comes from how you live, from the compassion you show, both to yourself and to those around you.
Li Wei listened, his heart lighter than it had been in years. Seasons passed, and Li Wei changed. He no longer cared about the examinations, nor did he seek the approval of his father or the village. He found joy in small things, helping his elderly neighbor plant her vegetables, teaching the local children how to read, sharing what little he had with those in need. The village began to notice the change in him. The once awkward boy who had stumbled through life, desperate for approval, had grown into someone steady, someone others came to for guidance. Li Wei no longer sought respect, but it found him all the same. One evening, as the last light of the day faded from the sky, Li Wei and the monk sat together on the temple steps. The air was cool, and the scent of pine drifted in the breeze.
I think I understand now. Respect isn't about titles or exams. It's about how we treat others and ourselves.
Yes, young one, that is the truth. Like the lotus that blooms from the mud, true dignity and respect grow from within.
And as the stars appeared in the sky, Li Wei felt something he hadn't in years: peace. In time, Li Wei became known not for his scholarly achievements, but for his kindness and wisdom. The villagers began to seek his counsel, not as the once failed scholar, but as a man who had found peace within himself. Word spread across the region of a humble teacher who did not wear the robes of a great scholar, yet held wisdom deeper than any official title could offer. One afternoon, as he sat under the same bamboo trees where his journey had begun, a young boy approached him, his eyes downcast. He too had failed the imperial exams and carried the same burden Li Wei had once known so well. "Master Li," the boy stammered, "I've failed. I don't know what to do." Li Wei saw himself in the boy, crushed by failure, thinking self-worth came from others. He gestured for the boy to sit.
I once believed failure made me worthless, but respect doesn't come from titles or success. It comes from how you live, with kindness, for yourself and others.
The boy looked up, surprised. "How did you change?"
I learned that worth isn't earned, it's already within you. Through mindfulness and compassion, I found dignity not in status, but in living with integrity.
The boy's expression lightened. "Can I find that peace too?"
The path is always there, waiting for you to take the first step.
As the boy left, Li Wei felt a deep contentment. He hadn't gained wealth or fame, but he had found something far greater, a life of dignity, built from within.